Funding for So Many Quilts was provided by Leisure Arts, a leading publisher and distributor of quality needlework and craft publications and products. American Professional Quilting Systems, ultimate hand-guided quilting machines made in America's heartland. Crafter's Choice, America's #1 crafts club. Oxmoor House, Bernina of America, and Omnigrid.
I'm Mary Ann Fonz.
And I'm Liz Porter. Welcome to So Many Quilts.
Today we're looking at a really stunning contemporary quilt made by Marilyn Badger of Oregon. It combines bright batik fabrics and some interesting bright plaids in a really fairly simple patchwork design that is enhanced by the beautiful machine quilting.
Oh, I like the strong diagonal lines that Marilyn has used that really emphasize the diagonal lines of the patchwork. The quilting really draws your eye to that and really carries that woven ribbon effect out very, very well in this design.
It's a very graphic quilt, and what I love in this particular quilt is her use of circles as quilting designs. And on this particular square, the blocks are divided by squares every so often. We have, what, 6 or 7 concentric circles that are probably about 1/4 of an inch apart, and they are just perfect.
When they're perfect, the ends match up. They're not squashed looking. Right. And I think nice straight diagonal lines and smooth circles and curves are some of the hardest things to either hand or machine quilt.
Well, and if you were hand quilting, you wouldn't do this many circles. It would just take so long.
But Marilyn has a trick.
She has a trick, and we're going to
she's going to show us. So we're going to go over and meet Marilyn and have her show us her tricks for getting these diagonals and getting nice circles.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
It's nice to have you.
I'm so glad to have you back with us, Marilyn.
Nice to be back.
We are excited to see you do some demonstrations for us today and show us how you work some of your magic with machine quilting with the American Professional Machine.
All right.
So we're going to start with a top. Is this one of yours or something that you're working on for someone?
Well, it's a quilt I'm working on for someone. And I started it with by doing a border pattern, which I have laying here on the machine. And I've rolled and done a series of circles, and then we worked like a sunburst around it.
And the sunburst goes in this plain square area, which is a light-colored fabric. It's kind of a sponge print, so it's sort of solid, and it's a perfect place for some fancy quilting.
Right.
Well, I'm excited to see you do the circles.
Okay.
I can't draw them with a compass, much less quilt them.
Well, you can't miss with this. We have an attachment for the American Professional Machine. It's called the Hartley Fence, and it enables you to do a series of circles, and then when you want to take the circles off, you can do diagonals. So I have it set up to do 4 circles in the center of this block.
Okay. And this is an exclusive attachment at this point for the American Professional Machine.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right.
All right, well, let's see how to do circles here.
Okay, we're going to start with our largest circle and work in, because that helps me to set it up inside the block. I know where I'm starting, where it's centered. So
there's always room to the inside, but not necessarily to the outside.
Right, then you'd know how far to the edge of the block all the way around, and you could get that charted so it would be perfect.
Gauge that a little, your spacing a little easier.
So with the American Professional Machine, we have a 1-stitch button. You just push it, and it'll bring your bobbin thread up for you.
And that keeps from having the threads snarl on the back side.
Right.
And then hate those when I get them.
You can also hit it a couple of times just to lock your stitches. When you're working out in the center of a quilt, you do need to lock them.
So that they won't come out then later when the quilt is used and washed. They're secure.
You don't have to tie knots in those threads or anything. That secures the stitching.
You can. It depends on your customer. If they want the quilter's knots and buried, then you can do that too. But at least you have both of them on the top and you can do it.
I'll bet you like the customers that don't want
I do.
I would go for those people
back and say, bury your own.
Yeah, they bury them. That's right.
Okay.
Okay, then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to stand here and push the start and go button and just guide it around.
Track right around and...
Just try to keep a steady, even stitch. That
and then
determines
you stop
your length.
when you just pass your beginning point just a little bit, when you stop, and the smoothness of how fast you move the machine keeps your stitches even.
Right.
But your circle's always maintained
Right.
by the compass type attachment.
Right. It's locked into the hole that relates to that circle, and it can't go anywhere.
How many circles did you say we had to do
We're
here?
going to do 4.
Okay.
I think we need to watch you do one more.
Okay.
And then we might get brave enough. And,
Yes.
And do you think your customer would mind if Mary Ann and I try to circle?
Not at all, because you can do these perfect.
Okay.
And if she minds, you can take them out.
You can tell us it's okay. You know.
Okay, I've just slipped it into the next hole up on the circle attachment, and I'm not going to clip my threads. I'll do all that later.
Okay.
Oh, it's so nice. The spacing is perfect. It looks wonderful.
And so by overlapping just by a few stitches, that's just like a back
Same.
stitch, the same principle, really.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, it's
Okay,
my
you
turn,
ready to do
right?
one?
Okay, you get it
All
set
right,
up for me.
Meryl's gonna set it
It's
in.
a very simple
I'm
thing.
going to come
It's in
around
the
over
next
here.
hole.
Okay, so I hold the button down. I just push it down. I don't have to hold it the whole way
Right.
around. Okay.
Just release, push, and release.
Okay, it may not be as good as yours, but
Perfect.
I have a little more back stitching there than maybe you need. But okay.
A little slow with the trigger
Yeah,
finger.
yeah.
All right, well, we'll see how I do.
Okay,
You know,
all
it's
right.
easy to watch.
Yes,
and we'll
right.
see if I could make one, too.
Okay, we'll move it up into
Now,
the
my
final
circle's
circle.
smaller, so
very
it won't
small.
take me very long to go around mine.
Right.
Right? All right, so I'm on, and I go around. Oh, quick. Oh, I
You went around quick.
I stopped a little bit
But
over.
you can just go back around again if you want to,
And then
because
it
it's
would
right
make
on the
it-
same stitching.
And that would make it look real even. Oh,
Yeah.
my circle went really
Yeah, real
fast. Those are fun. I
Yeah,
can
they're
enjoy
great.
doing circles.
You get a good rhythm going, and they
Well,
go
and the
fast.
circles are so pleasing with
Right.
all the straight lines of so many patchwork seams. Really soften the
Yes.
design so much. It
Often
can be a
the
nice complement
a
to what we're
curve is
doing.
so often the perfect.
Okay, now we're going to decorate the circle, right?
Okay, yes, we're going to work a little sunburst around it. We want to clip our thread, our top thread, and on this machine we also
And do
have
we need to clip the bobbin
the
thread
bobbin
too,
thread
then?
is just by pushing this button, and it'll cut
I
your
love
bobbin
that.
thread.
Oh, so we don't have to stick our head under there and
No.
worry about poking a hole in the back of the quilt with scissors. I've done
Right,
it
or
so
getting
bad.
down on your knees and
Yeah.
fishing
It
around
means
under
you
there.
put your name patch in the middle of your quilt to cover it all.
Yeah, right. We've had to do that.
It'd be embarrassing on someone else's
Yeah.
quilt, so that thread clipping attachment is really nice for the bobbin thread.
Right, and so
So-
we have I have a pattern here for the sunburst that I'm going to work around these circles. And basically I've just Xeroxed a pattern. I've taped it down on the table in the place where I want to work them. And
And you kind of did a trial run without stitching to make sure of your placement.
right,
And you've marked a position that you're going to start stitching
right.
with a little X, and we're going to go from there so we know when we meet back up
And you,
with where
right.
it is.
You
I'm
need
glad
that
you're
X.
doing this
Be-
part, Marilyn.
Because you're going to be, rather than watching the quilt, you're going to be watching the pattern.
Right.
And so you need to know, you need to have a stopping point on that pattern so you know, so you don't have to glance up at the quilt so much
Right.
where to stop. I
Yeah,
can
so
see
you
it.
lose your track.
Round and round.
Right, and you always want to start on the inside of, or at a point, rather than out in a curve, because you'll never come back into that curve in just the
I
right
see.
place.
I'm sure you
So-
learned that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The smart places to start.
So we're going to pull our bobbin thread up again and
This is the snarl
take a
preventer
little,
here.
take another little stitch.
Now we lock
And
the
I'll just keep
stitches.
these threads right in here for the time being out of the way so we don't get tangled up
Okay.
in them. And with the laser stylus that's on this machine, we're just going to use that and follow the pattern as closely as we can. You don't have to worry about staying exactly on it as long as you're smooth.
Okay.
So you have a little red beam of light that's
Right.
going to trace your
Just
design.
a-
That's very accurate.
Yes.
it
A little
looks
red
like.
dot.
Seems very trendy.
Okay. Oh, yes,
It's
it is.
so technical.
And here we go. And you will notice that I'm leaving off part of this pattern because it just doesn't fit for what I want. So you can adapt some of the patterns to do whatever you want. You don't have to use the whole thing.
Looking like a sun.
And
We
there's your
could
X.
sit and watch top and bottom.
Top and bottom.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really a neat the way you've adapted this design because it seems to complement the quilt very well. It's a very contemporary looking quilt, which a lot of your things are very modern looking. They're not
Yes.
old-fashioned stuff. And this little sunburst just seems to go perfectly with it. It's very
really does.
happy.
It accents those circles and just gives you a little bit of fancy stitching around them.
So we've got the perfect circles made, and we've embellished those circles to make a starburst. Now I want to see us do those diagonal lines. Mel.
Okay.
So you do a little changeover,
Right.
correct?
We're
Use
just
the
going to
same
take our
basic
circle attachment
platform.
off and put a little wheel in here that will follow our diagonal attachment.
So you've got special little tools that this comes with the attachment.
Special little wrenches that make it so much faster and easier. Put our wheel right here.
Well, I think it's nice the tools work exactly with this machine, so no one is going to borrow them to do something else with them. And so you're not going to ever lose them.
That's right.
Hammers. You
Yes.
know, I can't count the number of hammers I bought, and someone in my family wanders off the hammer or a screwdriver or
Pair of
something.
scissors.
These are your very own tools for your toys.
Right, and you don't need to take them anywhere else to use in
Right.
your sewing room or
That's
for
good.
anything else. Now, when I do diagonals, it comes in handy to just mark that original diagonal setting after you have eyeballed it or whatever, and then you've got it on there, and you don't have to, when you change your angles, you
Right.
don't have to mess with trying
And
to
you know
find
you're
it
at
again.
least close here might have to fine tune a little bit, but you've basically got it figured
Right.
out. Now when you're doing the diagonals, Marilyn, when you were actually quilting on this, so they're using one color of thread for the plain blocks with the circles, and another color for the diagonals. So you would probably do all the tan squares, and then change if you wanted to change thread color. You change thread color and then do all of the diagonals with that new thread color,
Right.
rather than having to keep changing
Right,
threads.
and then do all of my diagonals in one direction, and then come back, roll the quilt back, and do all of them in the next direction.
So
I
you
never have
don't
to change
switch
the
back.
angle.
But it didn't take you very long to switch. But if
No.
you were working on a project, it would just make sense to do all of one kind of thing at one
Yes,
time and
you
then
do want
change.
to save some time. yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's all about making a little money.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So you can support your fabric habit, right?
Exactly.
Everyone's looking for a way to do that.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to just pull up my bobbin thread like I did, and I'm going to do a little back stitch and then go forward.
Okay.
So this is what
All
when I
right.
get up there, I want to stop as close to that seam as I can, and then I can bury it in the seams, and if I had a continuation, I would pick up in that seam, and you wouldn't see where you stop and start.
And the seam kind of helps hide those little bit smaller stitches or your overlap in your stitching.
Right.
Something I noticed about this that is really wonderful, that you have no marks whatsoever on this quilt.
Right.
Using the fence for the circles, there are no marks there. And then for the pattern, the little spikes around the circle by using the laser stylus. And, you know, marking is a big problem because we hate to put any kind of chemical marker on. If you just use pencil, maybe you can't see it. Maybe you make an error mark and you have that problem. So that just negates all those kind of problems that we struggle with sometimes.
Right. And when you get someone else's quilt that you're quilting, you don't want to be responsible for that. So
Plus
if I want to
marking-
mark it, that's fine.
Marking's really tedious, too.
It's a lot of work to do. I've always said, you know, the person who invents the perfect marker is going to make a fortune,
Yes.
but it's really nice to avoid having to do any kind of marking on the quilt.
Do most customers let you decide what to quilt, or do some of them have an idea of what they want?
They do. Some do. Some have their own ideas, but most of them just say, do whatever you think's right.
Oh,
That's
right.
They have confidence in your
Right.
decision.
Well,
Can
right.
we look at some of the things
Sure.
that you've brought with you that you've done some quilting on? And I
Sure.
always think that choosing a quilting design is really a difficult decision. Maybe we can slide the machine down
Okay.
a little and we'll lay
Open this one out.
open the quilt up a little bit and look at what you've done with the pattern. I think we can see what's happening here.
This one really showcases Marilyn's ability with her machine, her American Professional machine, for doing these diagonals, because it's a zigzag set and the quilting really enhances that setting.
Right, and this is a quilt that she marked with pencils, so I did have the marks, and it was a good thing because this center, when you have it on the machine, you can't really tell where the center is sometimes. So it was nice because this is all different diagonals
Right.
than what is out here.
Okay, so you
she
followed the
marked all
pencil
those.
mark on this.
And I just lined the fence diagonal
Okay.
up with this mark here and this mark here.
And even though it was marked, you still used the fence because that helped you pull that smooth
Yes.
even non-wobbly line.
It would have been impossible to do these without it.
Right.
Now, then you use the compass attachment for the fence to put
Right.
the circles.
Just some
the
interlocking
blocks?
circles in those blocks to get them quilted down. And
This is a good example where you can see the quilting a lot more on the light fabric, but just this circular amount in there on these pattern
Softens
fabrics,
that.
it's beautiful. It's
Well,
great.
and those blocks are strip-pieced with strong angular lines. Then I like
Right.
what the curve, how that
Soften
softens
them.
those strong
That's
lines.
beautiful.
That's lovely.
Let me grab another quilt.
Okay. Now, how long would it take you, Marilyn, to quilt a quilt like this, typically?
this one would probably not be more than 3 hours.
Ah, that's appealing.
It's
So we
beautiful.
can go from being a club of, I met a group once that called themselves Tops Only, which I
Right.
thought was, pretty good name for a lot of quilters. We all have a considerable number of UFOs or unfinished objects that we're worried about how to get finished. And what your American Professional Machine does for you is let you go from being tops only to quilts only,
Yeah.
finished quilts.
Yeah.
So
Here's
that's
another.
wonderful.
Now, is this one of your projects, or is this one
This
that you
is one
quilted?
of mine that I did on a little workshop,
Mhm.
tessellations.
It's the fun.
And it is just overall quilting. I mean, I've just freehand.
Oh.
And it's kind of a takeoff on what Carol Breyer-Fallert does. I had a book by her, and I just wanted to try it in the variegated rayon thread. And it's just a lot of fun to do.
The thread is gorgeous, and you can use a thread like this in the large Ultimate machine.
Right, right. This is just 40 weight sulky that they sell.
Now, do you have to make a lot of adaptation to use this type of thread?
No, I just lower the tension so that it pulls out of there fairly free. And I do lay it down on a spool holder instead of having it stand upright.
And so it feeds off with the,
Very
It's happier
smooth.
coming
gets your
off.
tension a little more even.
This is neat. This is like stippling, but it's not exactly that stipple pattern that we've seen a lot. It's a little bit different. They're almost like feather motifs kind of subtly in there.
Right. I like to come up with new ideas for fillers instead of stippling. A lot
Now,
of people are doing that.
when you did this, did you do this freehand, or do you have a pattern?
No, it's freehand.
So you just kind of go
Start it up at the top
go
and
where you want
build in.
and fill it in. Well, the variegated thread just
Beautiful.
is lovely on that because it shows up more some places and less others, and really a nice touch on that
I
design.
understand that you're also teaching workshops now. Not only do you take on quilting, doing quilts that other people have made, you do a lot of your own work, but you're also giving classes in your studio for people who are thinking of buying a machine or have bought a machine, and you take them through all the steps so that they walk away with their undergraduate degree and
Right.
machine quilting.
Or at least have
Or
enough
graduate.
confidence to get started.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
And so do you have very many at a time in a class? or-
Maximum of 4, minimum of 2. And we go all day from 9 until 5:30 until they're ready to go home and have a nap.
For one day, so it's a one-day intensive, like learning French in one
Really
day.
intense. We
Yeah.
start
So
from the
there's
beginning.
enough demand for this machine quilting for you to feel comfortable with sharing your skills and not knowing that it's not going to put yourself out of business.
Right, yes. It doesn't matter how many machines are in the area. When you get decent at running the machine, there's always plenty of work.
Well,
There's
people
lots
love
of tops around.
Well, see, people feel kind of guilty about those tops because they're unfinished. So you're helping them get over the guilt, or anyone who's machine quilting and getting our quilts done, then we feel happy we can then give them to our family or put them on the bed and
Right,
not
and use
in the
them.
closet. Yeah, that's
Well,
good.
can we look at one more?
Yes, let me get.
Oh, this one's
Now
really
this quilt,
colorful.
this quilt belongs to, there are 4 people involved in this quilt, and it was done in a Margaret Miller workshop. It's called Canned Heat. And
Ooh.
so the owner who made the blocks wanted me to quilt flames in here. So when you lay it out, you see that the flames come up toward the center, and then I just stippled out as close as I could to make them pop out a little bit more. Since the quilt is so busy, you can't see a whole lot. But
So this is one where the quilting adds texture, but you don't really see the actual design that much.
You want it to kind of blend in, but give a little
And
feature.
you've used the variegated thread again on this so that it stands out more in some places, less in others, and that's really a nice touch.
Well, what's so neat is that the quilting then even goes along with the theme of the quilt. I mean, you
Right.
can really bring a lot of creativity to this.
Yes.
And you do a fair number of garments too, right? The
Yes,
garment
I
that you're
do.
wearing, yes.
Yes, and to quilt one of these, you just mount a piece of muslin on your machine and pin the pieces down and quilt like
it.
crazy.
That's wonderful.
Well, and then now does the garment shrink up at all as you're working?
It will pull up a little bit, so I always cut my pieces the next size up.
So, you get to lose weight
Yeah,
when it gets quilted.
It's a machine that will do everything you need.
Well, I'd like to look at one more of your quilts, Marilyn, that
Okay.
you've brought along. And would you tell us about this example?
Okay, this is a, actually it's a raffle quilt. Carol Moss from the Gold Beach Quilt Guild does a project graduation quilt every year for a safe and sober graduation party, and she brought it to me at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and wanted to pick it up at 9 o'clock the next morning. So we had to work fast. Therefore, the circles in the centers would go really fast, and instead of doing straight lines across, I did intentionally wavy lines so that, you know, it would go faster and you wouldn't really be disappointed if they didn't hit just right. So.
And that's a good point. If you're not sure if you can go straight across, don't try to go straight across. Just kind of make it go. Now, by choosing the circular design for the white areas, you get kind of a ball effect. It enhances the fact that you've got an illusion of a kind of a circular white area. And this design is called Snowball, isn't it?
Right. Snowball.
So by emphasizing that with the circular quilting, you kind of keep that theme going also.
Right. And the fabrics are wonderful. You've got a lot of, or Carol put a lot of the batiks, the new bright batik fabrics in there, and some of those sponge prints, and really a kind of a jewel tone effect. So it's really neat that, like so many quilters, that Carol is doing a service project like this for her community. I'm always proud of quilters when I hear about those things.
Yeah, and she always does a beautiful job.
Now, you said she brought it to you at 1 in the afternoon and wanted it the next morning. Did you have to work all night on this?
No, I quit at 5, so
I'm
it's about
impressed.
4 hours.
Very impressed.
Well, it's always so much fun to look at your work, Marilyn, and to see how you work your magic on these quilts. And so it's just been such a pleasure to have you visit today, and we enjoyed so much seeing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Well,
it was my
thank
pleasure.
you for letting us help quilt, too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. Anytime.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.